Machine. Diacom, HL7, I18 in the snap. We're building the future, never looking back.
Welcome to another episode of Imaging Informatics Unplugged. Today we're going to dive into the world of designation, specifically the Certified Imaging Informatics Professional designation, or as the cool kids like to say, the CIIP designation. And people often ask me, what is the value of getting certified? It's kind of like when Mick Jagger was knighted. We understand what happened, but why? Now, in this episode, we're going to break that down, and we're going to explore the value of earning your CIIP. We're going to share study tips and discuss much more. Joining us today are two guests from the American Board of Imaging Informatics, or ABI, and this is the organization that administers and manages the CIIP designation. First, we have Nicole, or Nikki Fennell, a certified imaging informatics professional with over 20 years of experience. She's held leadership and support roles in both clinical and industry spaces and currently works as a principal clinical systems analyst at Stanford Healthcare's Imaging Enterprise team. She also serves as the chair of the Education Committee for SIM. Chuck Socia is the immediate past chair of the American Board of Imaging Informatics. With 20 years of service to ABI, including being part of the founding board and serving as the first chair of the CIIP exam committee, Chuck brings a wealth of enterprise experience. He's a former technologist. He's been watching imaging informatics evolve from sending digital images over dial-up modems to managing divisions for major risk pack vendors. He has over 35 years in the field, and he has a unique perspective on the industry. So with all that said, let's just jump right into it. Okay, well, welcome, Nikki and Chuck. Thank you very much for joining me today. And we're here to have a lively discussion around the Certified Imaging Informatics Professional, or the CIIP designation. And so I would imagine a lot of people dialing in. Who am I dialing in? A lot of the people streaming this right now would be familiar with the CIIP, but I wanted to set the table and talk about what is this designation? Who is typically the people that are geared towards going down the path of achieving this designation or this certification?
Sure. Chuck?
Sure.
Chuck
Yeah,
was,
so-
I'm gonna have Chuck take this because Chuck was in the room when this was, he was there when this was built, so he's got all the knowledge. So we're gonna let him run with this. Also, he's currently the chair of the board of ABI, so he definitely has a lot of good info to share.
Sure. So, like Nikki said, this started, believe it or not, we are coming up on 20 years ago that we started this effort. And at the time, there was a conference, you may have heard of it, SCAR, where we were meeting, and we were talking about the need to identify who was qualified to work in the field. And at the time, it was a fairly new field of imaging informatics, and it was the PACS administrators, the risk administrators, the people who work on a dictation system, and they started to realize, wait a minute, this is so much bigger than just the PACS software. We have a big problem to solve here. We have to figure out how do we identify who are the individuals who are qualified to work in this industry, who are not going to go around tomorrow and delete half my patients because they didn't know how to type a SQL script. And we started looking through how do we qualify, how do we determine who is qualified to do this job. And we came to the realization that really one of the things we need to do is we need to test knowledge. And in the effort of building the test, we actually built, and it was originally just a SCAR effort, became SIM during the effort to make the change. And then they moved on to, we made a partnership. We went out looking for vendors to publish our test because you needed some way to put it out there so people could do a test. And what we did learn is that we didn't know enough to do that ourselves. So we actually did out RFPs and went out to the same people that offer the ACT test, all kinds of different people were offering different types of testing scenarios. And we actually, through all of our discussions, got involved with ARRT, which is the agency that certifies radiologic technologists, X-ray techs. And that's actually what they did. And we're like, wait a minute, you're in radiology. We're in radiology. This makes sense. And they made a sweetheart deal with us that said basically we've spent the past 10 years trying to figure out how to build an exam, and we don't have the expertise to build an exam in imaging informatics because we don't know anything about it. Just to put it in perspective, when I went in, and this is in 20 years ago, so we're not talking the 80s, this was in 2000s, and I went into the ARRT office and we started to write the exam. This is how we're going to build it out. They walked in with a box of pencils and a pack of paper. I said, let's get started. And we're like, there's easier ways to do this. You've heard of Excel, right? So it's been a great partnership over the years where we have drugged them on into the 20th century, and they have helped us in some of the things that we didn't know in building the exam. So, but to answer the question, and I know you actually asked a question a long time ago before I get off the radar, but the imaging informatics certification is really for anybody who's working in a field that applies to the wide breadth of what an imaging informaticist does in the actual practice, not necessarily the science of, but day-to-day operations of.
Yep.
Terrific.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I love the history lesson, and it's hard to believe we're looking at 2 decades now, and we've had a number of students or certificates that have come up for renewal, and it shows you the maturity of the designation when you look back at it like that. One of the questions I often get asked is from people that don't have their CIIP that are very proficient imaging informaticists. And they ask me, so, why should I go about getting this? And I have my, thoughts around this. I think it proves that you've done something kind of outwardly, but I'm curious what your elevator pitch would be if you were talking to someone like that. Maybe Nikki, what are your thoughts?
I think the elevator pitch would be that it is proving the value of your knowledge, right? So when you sit for this exam, you have to study across 10 domains, right? We have 10 knowledge areas that you have to test against when you sit for this exam. And it ranges from project management to, systems engineering, all of those categories, which means in order to qualify and to sit and pass this exam, you have to know enough in all of those areas, which I think shows to people I can do this work because I'm not just going to be the person who just does the technical piece. I also know what it means when we have a new application that comes in and we have to go through the project piece. I also know how to work on communications and how to build a downtime system and how to communicate about downtime. I mean, there's just a wealth of things that come in that knowledge sphere, if you will. And so I think what you're telling people is I'm committed to this career, right? This is what I do. I do it well. I understand it. And I can prove that to you because I passed this very highly regarded exam. And I'm one of those people who is a CIIP. Chuck?
You get to be part of the tribe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
I live in Arkansas, so our buildings are much shorter, so our elevator pitches have to be quicker. But I would pull the most recent salary survey, and then at some page 8 or so, it says CIIPs make more money.
Yeah.
There's your elevator
Good
pitch
point.
for you, but yeah. But yeah, to Nikki's point, it is the people who are willing to go the extra mile to prove that they are qualified to work in the profession. Those are the ones that have the certificate.
So I'm curious, we've mentioned that word qualify a couple times, and I would like you to expand on what it takes to qualify to take the exam to begin with. Because there are certain benchmarks that people have to make to meet the thresholds to the bare minimums, I guess. So what are those areas that they would want to make sure that they're achieving to qualify?
So there's a 7-point qualification system in order to be able to actually sign up to take the certification exam. And the 3 areas that it covers are experience, which is direct experience in the field of imaging informatics, healthcare informatics. The second category is academic education, and the third category is continuing education. And in order to earn those 7 points, it's a combination of those things that would get you the 7 points needed to sit for the exam. And some people come in with a lot more experience and not so much education, and vice versa, right? So we're pretty flexible about giving people the opportunity to get that pathway in the door.
Terrific. And then earlier you had mentioned there's 10 test content outline areas that are covered. And so what would you say to someone? I've chatted with individuals in this type of situation where they've passed the exam. Sorry, they failed to pass the exam. They just came short of it, and they get their results back, and they can see maybe deficiencies in areas and that they have to work on. But what would be your kind of sense of encouragement to allow them to go through? Where would you direct them to start looking to make sure they're getting the most out of their studying?
One of the study tactics that I've used over the years to recommend to people for this exam is to go to Google, take your test content outline, and type in the header. When you go to the header of those 10 areas, the first 10 results on the Google response, if you know exactly what they're talking about, skip that and go focus on an area, because there's one of those 10 areas that you're going to be weaker at. The exam itself, believe it or not, it has a reputation for being extremely hard, but that's actually not necessarily the case. The exam is based on an entry level, someone knowing all of the required knowledge to do it. So we're not trying to trick you with questions, and there's not really hard material. Most of the time people are struggling simply because of the breadth of the material. There's such a wide area of topics that are covered under the certification, under the exam, that it's hard for everybody to be prepared on everything all at once. But taking the time and doing the simple, just the sniff test of when I open Google and I type in this thing, that I know what they're talking about, that gives you a good idea whether or not you've got the answers to the questions.
That's a good approach. Is that a personal study trick that you learned along the way, or?
It's how we created the most of the content originally. Years ago, you gotta remember when we started this exam, the certification, while we were writing exam questions, we were also writing the reference material you were using to study for the exam, because most of the authors who wrote books about this profession at the time were the same people writing the certification. So there was no study material when we started, and that's how we really got to the basics of it, is what are the key areas in this genre, or in this area, that an individual would need to know something about.
Yep.
And Nikki, you were going to say something, I think.
I think the test content outline, great approach, Chuck, of Google. I used Google a lot myself when I went through. I sat for the test in 2008, so I was in the second round of it, and Google was my friend for sure. But I think when you look at that test content outline as somebody who's going to take the test, you can say right off the bat, oh, I don't need to study this. Like if I'm a rad tech and I'm coming in, I don't need to study positioning. I already know that, right?
Mhm.
So push that away, push this away, and just focus on those pieces where I have no idea. I've never done a project management thing. So let's go through this, But it was, Google is everyone's friend when you're studying.
And I think you have different branches of what got you to want to be a CIIP. There's the rad tech, there's the IT. I'm an IT person from background.
Me too.
And so when I was taking the test, the areas I would focus on would have been very easy for someone coming from a technologist background. So it's a multifaceted, and I think that's one of the things that makes this community so rich, is the fact that we have a very rich tapestry of different types of individuals that all fall under this umbrella of what a CIIP is.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. We touched on this. Getting close to the last question here, but we touched on this earlier when you mentioned it's been proven that CIIPs make more money. And so I wanted to touch on, what have you heard as far as kind of people going down this path, getting the certification, and how has it helped them in their career trajectory?
Yes. So going back to the original 2006, 2007 cohort, well, we brought this through. And I hate to say it, but it's actually a problem of ours because so many of that original cohort is now in leadership roles, C-suite roles, that we're actually losing CIIPs because they're now managing their operations. Many of those people have moved into very lucrative vendor jobs. It is an excellent way to get started on the profession and move up, because you've done that extra to prove that you're willing to go that and prove that you're qualified to do the job. And it really identifies the individuals who are willing to take that step above and beyond just doing the basics of get through your everyday job.
Yep. And I think you can use your certification throughout your career. So I know a lot of my colleagues that do have the CIIP we've talked about this, right? You use that to advocate for yourself and your knowledge, and you find places where you can go in your career where it is valued, where the leadership team knows what it is, and you work along those avenues. I would say 100% that my certification has helped me in my career path. I know it to be true. Some of the jobs that I have had, and the job that I hold now, is partly because of having my certification and knowing people in this industry that also value it, right? So, and people that we regard very highly, Sylvia Devlin, Amina Ilahi, they both would swear that their CIIP is what helped them get to where they are today. So I think that those are great testimonials, from some very accomplished people.
Yeah, I know whenever I'm posting a job, that's always something I'm going to make sure is listed as a requirement as CIIP. So this brings us to a close here. I just wanted to give either of you an opportunity to do one last final statement around the designation if you want, or we just close out.
I'm just going to put a plug out there. There is actually, if you want to learn more about what the value of the certification is, Amina actually wrote a white paper that is available in the Journal of Imaging Informatics in Medicine. And it's a study that was done looking at some of the quality improvement projects that CIIPs have turned in as part of their tenure requirements. And it's a study of what types of things a CIIP does and brings value to their healthcare organization. I think it's worth a good read, and it goes hand in hand kind of with what Chuck said, also knowing that this value equates to higher salary, knowing that we polled folks with the SIN salary survey and we got that data back. So a lot of value in this certification. Don't be scared of it. Lots of us here to help you. So if anyone out there is watching and is interested, reach out.
Awesome. Chuck, anything?
That there's more to come. There's a lot of exciting things that are currently happening in and around. The board is taking some very large initiatives. I expect for some new exciting news of things that are coming out in the next year or so.
Agree.
We're looking forward to share with the current diplomats what they're getting from the profession. We're working very hard to try to build some value into the certification for the individuals who are certified, and to encourage others to follow along. So.
Terrific.
Excellent.
This is very exciting. Yeah, well, thank you, both of you, and we'll
Sure.
close out.
Dream Machine.com, HL7IHE in the snap. We're building the future, never looking back.